This session will explore further how the digital revolution has created a need for digital Islamic services, especially among millennial Muslims. To moderate this session, I'd like to introduce someone who's had a tremendous impact in the digital Islamic media space, the founding editor-in-chief of MuslimGirl.net, Amani Al-Khattabi.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Amani Al-Khattabi, and I am pleased to be your moderator for this session today. I am the founding editor-in-chief of MuslimGirl.net. It's an online magazine by and for Muslim women in Western societies. It's currently the most popular platform for Muslim women's opinions in the United States, and we have a thing or two to say about the growing marketplace for Muslim women and millennials and the digital innovation that we all get to enjoy and witness at the moment. So it's my pleasure to be joined by our panelists today. I want to actually give the opportunity for each one of them to introduce themselves to you. They've prepared a short intro to better explain where they're coming from and their background in this topic area. And I want you all to be prepared with questions that you can ask our esteemed guests today. We're going to be opening the floor up to questions early on. So without further ado, please begin.
My name is Ayman Al-Bannau from Ala Capital Management. And I would like to start by being 35 years in technology and looking at all those 35 years. Today, I've seen technology move in aggressive steps. For example, today, my father, whenever he travels, he uses the phone to see the timing of the Salat and Qibla. I couldn't imagine that 10, 20 years ago. Today, myself, the first news I get about Al-Eid Hilal sighting, I get it from Twitter before anybody else. And also, I pay charity and zakat today online. And we can imagine how we used to do those before. We used to do them online and on our mobiles. But still, we are early on. I cannot wait to see using technology to bring attributes that we already have fundamentally in our mosques with us all the time. I cannot wait to see a very rich streaming service like Netflix that is Sharia compliant, fundamentally establishing all the Islamic ethics. Also, I cannot wait to see a halal section in every international online store. And finally, most importantly, our kids, teenagers, and millennials. Today, they spend a lot of time online. I would love to see that they spend this time in an Islamic Sharia-compliant environment as much as they spend it on the conventional. Also, I might expect to see a wearable, a smartwatch that maybe tracks my salat and rak'ahs, tells me if I did something wrong. And maybe one day we will find even a hasanat, sayyat tracker. That's possible, think about it. Let's talk most importantly about the millennials. I mean, millennials by definition are whoever is born in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, and they are the main driver for the digital economy. And fortunately or unfortunately, today they have two lives, the real life and the virtual or online life. And big number of them, they have the virtual life more important than their online life. I mean, I've even witnessed a couple of them, they call the real life RL. So we need to approach this because currently we are almost do not exist in this virtual life, which is real for them. Our region, in terms of digital economy, have started showing some good signs. A good example of that, the acquisition that happened recently with Talabat.com from Kuwait, 170 million was acquired. And that's just the beginning. From the studies that we have done, we've seen that the infrastructure for the digital economy needs 2, 3, 4 years to be ready to make real investments and to be really lucrative. So I think more to come, where we will be at the time that we can see and say, well, even maybe Talabat have got acquired too early with a low price. Before we dive into technology, I would like to talk about some important aspects to make this happen, non-technical aspects. First of all, I think the most important question, where do we start? I would like to start something to help or to be part of this Islamic digital economy. Where do we start? I think we participated, DSO have participated in a very good way by doing thorough studies. There is a study that I was part of, and that's already supported by Dubai Islamic Center, and it was done by Deloitte, and it's available in the Dubai Islamic Economic Center, and it shows the whole landscape. That shows the whole picture. And we've done it in a very interesting way. I was part of that team. We've done it in a very interesting way where we've seen what everybody else have done and what our Muslim community have done and where are we. There is also a very interesting study that was done by DSO, also that is very rich, and I would leave later on Dr. Philip to talk more about it. Both of those studies, and we wish we have more, will be a very good start for anyone who would like to start up something. There are challenges. The challenges that we have, first of all, unfortunately, most of us Muslim, we don't know enough about Islam. We don't know enough about our religion. We don't read enough about our religion. We have to educate ourselves more. And most importantly, most of the literature, even our holy book, is in Arabic. First thing we should do, everyone who wants to work or participate or be active in the Muslim world, he have to learn Arabic. Unfortunately, in our study, we found out only 20% of Muslims today, they speak Arabic. And even less than that, speaking proper Arabic. I encourage everyone today to really take a first step, and have Arabic today as a second language. Hopefully with time we see that 20% becoming 30, 40, and maybe one day 80 or more, inshallah. Also, we need to engage more the people who are very literate with religion, who are our scholars. There are different structures, advisory boards, committees, advisors, and we need to engage them more. They will relieve us from understanding or taking the initiative to say, well, I did this. Is this right? I calculated Qibla this way. Is this right or not? We need to do that. And that's a very big challenge for us. Also, we need to technologically redefine the mosque role. I will talk 1 minute later about that. And I would seek one day, and this is something that we will try to seek and participate in, developing Sharia guidelines for anyone who wants to develop something digitally towards the Islamic economy. So it will become easier to engage international firms and entrepreneurs toward developing things for our community. And definitely, most importantly, we need a sponsor. Today, alhamdulillah, Dubai Islamic Economic Center with Abdullah Al-Awar and his team have done a great job. DSO are complementing that in a great way. And I think this is a good start. We haven't seen this kind of attention and sponsorship in our region before. I'll talk about the smart mosque a little bit. Unfortunately, the mosque was the most important establishment in the Muslim lifestyle. And it is socially, commercially, not only a worship place. That role have been, unfortunately, with time, being lessened. But now, because we have all of that in technology, we need to have this kind of relationship where something we introduced called the smart mosque, where we bring technologies to the mosque and we bring part of the mosque attribute to the technology to engage our youth more towards the mosque, to re-establish the role of the mosque. So I think with that, I will end it, and I'll leave it to my colleagues, and we will go into maybe more deeper technical discussions later on. Thank you.
My name is Philippe Bornier. I work for Dubai Silicon Oasis. We are, like my fellow panelists, an investor looking, among other things, looking into the ecosystem and trying to support companies that start up in the region. We run an entrepreneurship center. We have about 300, almost 300 companies in the entrepreneurship center. Some of them we invest in. Some of them we provide basic services and support. And then beyond that, we also do engage in investments in later stage companies. As an authority, we also a government entity. We have nice villas. We have all sorts of real estate available. Today, I will not go into that. I will look at the millennials and the digital Islamic economy from the point of view as an investor. And we would appreciate if there would be more excitement about this space. So in the research that has published as part of this this conference, it says here, I think in the first sentence, that in 2014 the global digital economy was worth an estimated $1.9 trillion. Yet the entrepreneurs we see in the region are very reluctant to look at this economy to the Islamic consumer and design something specific for such consumers. We've seen a little bit in Hajj travel, like we've seen in the competition yesterday and this morning. We've seen some applications in halal travel. We yet have to see exciting startups in the halal food sector. We've seen a little bit in halal shopping and modest clothing. It could be much more. And one thing we as an investor struggling with is to figure out how to motivate young millennials. People want to start up a business in the Middle East and say, I'm going to concentrate on this sector. I want to service, provide services, provide product for the clientele of the Muslim community, and we see very few. Everybody wants to do a new Facebook, a new e-commerce site, but very little people are looking at the actual culture, religion, community in the region and say, these people can be serviced better. Everybody wants to copy something, not everybody. Most startups want to copy something from the West rather than look inside the culture here and service to that. Actually, most of the exciting Islamic economy startups we see are in the UK, they're in the US, they're in Australia, where Muslims are startup companies, they're founders, and they figure out a way how to service the needs of the Muslim community there, be it access to mosques, be it access to modest clothing, being access to halal foods. They have all the technology works to figure that out. It would be for us as an investor and as an active supporter of the Islamic Economy Initiative by His Highness, very nice to see more ideas to get young entrepreneurs, millennia, more excited about the opportunity to use technology and apply it to a lifestyle. So if anybody has any suggestions there, if you know anybody, send them our way. We'd really love to develop that. I'm not going to talk more about that part because you guys are much more set up for that. In short, we are an investor. We're looking to actively invest into companies. We are looking at actively supporting the ecosystem. We've built an ecosystem in our free zone in Dubai Silicon Oasis, in our technology park, where everybody can go and set up. Some of them will need funding, some not. Some will need guidance and introduction, and we're trying to support that. We would be very happy if we have more people to support in our ecosystem, more young, old, male, women, UN national expats. Anybody is welcome to try to figure out how to service the market better. With that,
thank you very much, Philip. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of God, the most gracious, most merciful. I'd actually like to start really quickly, show of hands. Are there any digital Islamic economy entrepreneurs in the room? MashaAllah. So I see about half a dozen. Let's give them a big hand of applause. That's actually just a trick. I wanted you to move a little bit, but standing up would be too hard, so clap. My name is Chris Abdurrahman Blavelt. To get rid of any confusion, I am a Muslim. I became Muslim about 14 years ago. I'm the founder of a crowdfunding platform called launchgood.com. So if I'm too boring and you want to check your phone, at least do it by perusing launchgood.com. And we're like a Kickstarter or GoFundMe for the Muslim community. Two brief remarks I want to share. When we talk about the digital Islamic economy, the two pieces are the digital piece and the Islamic piece. And what I want you to remember is it's about opportunity and purpose. Opportunity and purpose. There's a saying that talent is universal. You find talented and brilliant people all over the world. But opportunity is not universal. And I am, personally amazed and very inspired to see what Dubai is doing with the Islamic economy. Like the fact that Philip is comfortable standing up here on stage and saying we want more Islamic businesses. I mean, in America, in like 3 days, we're going to have armed protests staged across 20 mosques by like radical right-wing Christian conservatives. And the Islamic anything is bad news. And so it's very inspiring to see that Dubai is trying to be leaders in creating opportunities for people around the world to actually do this. Because we need ecosystems. Without ecosystems, all the technology of the world won't make a difference. So I'd just like to commend you guys and really all the leaders of Dubai for that insight and foresight. The second piece is the Islamic, and briefly, I know for LaunchGood, people see us as a crowdfunding business, but we don't see ourselves as a crowdfunding business. We see ourselves as a community. And the premise of LaunchGood, what we call our seed, is that we believe Muslims have some incredible values to share with the world, and we're going to help get those out. And one of the things that's interesting about this conference is, I don't want to be critical, but the Islam of Islamic economy seems to be a little bit like in the shadows. I know for myself that really inspires me, and I hope a lot of young entrepreneurs, it's the greatest inspiration. Allah says in the Quran, "Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrajat linnas." You're the best nation, example brought forth for mankind. Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf. You enjoin people to that which known to be good. Ta'muruna bil ma'ruf. You push people towards goodness. Like it's well known by people. And this is the opportunity for us as Muslim entrepreneurs, is to create businesses that don't just make money, but really push society to be their best selves. And thank you. And so I'll end on that note, but I really do hope we keep in mind with especially the young people that are getting into this digital Islamic economy. It's not that it's because it's $1.x trillion, but it's because this is just the greatest privilege that we can do, is that you can actually make a living serving humanity and serving God, and that's the opportunity within this space.
Wonderful. Assalamu alaikum. Chris's boundless energy is exactly what's amazing about this economy. I am not a millennial. As I tease my millennial friends, I'm from the generation
But you're the only one that uses Periscope on this panel, so.
I'm the generation that created the internet, you're the generation that uses it. So I'm decidedly Gen X. To understand my story, I was fortunate enough to be in Silicon Valley in the 1990s when this thing called the internet was born. And being somebody who has always been concerned about how Islam interacted with the world, the first thing I thought about was, how do we use this amazing new tool to elevate our community, to empower our community, to capture our narratives? And as you can imagine, the playing field was wide open. And we could do really anything at the time. I did many startups in Silicon Valley, but while I was doing mainstream startups as well, I was doing, we didn't call it the Islamic economy back then, but the beginnings of it. In 1998, I created Zabiya.com, which is the world's largest guide to halal restaurants and markets. Because I was trying to figure out a way, and it actually came out because a bunch of Muslim coders were looking for places to eat at night, and we would swap restaurants that we stumbled onto, and we then put up a web page, and I realized people were visiting this page from all over the place, and I said, man, this might be a good idea. And so it started with 200, and now is at 20,000, and it's growing and growing and growing. A short time later, I created a website called Alt Muslim, which was meant to train and highlight Muslim creatives and journalists and bloggers to tell our own stories, particularly in the days after 9/11, where people were talking about Muslims as if we were animals in a cage, or if we're anthropological subjects, not even seeking our opinions. And this property was acquired in 2011 by a company called Patheos. I believe it is the first digital Islamic economy entity to be acquired by a mainstream company. I can't find any previous
like
ones.
It's still the only one.
Well, no, I don't. I think there have been others, but it was the first to my knowledge. And along the way, I've created other entities, Salatomatic, which is a mosque review site, and some others. And now currently manage a incubator called Affinis Labs, and an accelerator, which is helping to seed new business ideas in this economy through hackathons that we hold around the world in Muslim communities, trying to identify Muslim talent, trying to challenge them in a high-pressure environment to come up with solutions to either social challenges or business challenges, and then incubating companies, accelerating companies that have already come up with an idea and trying to get them to the next level and trying to promote them, and then on top of that raising a fund so that we can eventually fund these companies, and then start creating the 1,000 and 10,000, a number of companies that we need so that the few really successful ones rise to the top. Because it does take a lot of risk to make something happen. And along the way, I've learned kind of lessons that I'd like to share some of which with you today. The first is really leveraging off of something that Chris had said. We can approach this economy as an affinity group, like any other affinity group, where you're marketing to someone based on their national origin or their ethnicity or something like that. That's like the lowest kind of level that you could do, right? But if you look at this economy as one based, we are a value-based community. We're not simply just a kind of an ethnic community or a national community. We're a values-based community. We're the largest values-based community in the world when you look at it as a market segment. And if we're going to truly respect that, then our goods and services need to reflect those values. So I see level one is just marketing to people as an affinity, taking something standard, marketing to Muslims, and then that's level one. Level two is how do you make it easier for Muslims to practice or to enhance their values, right? So that Muslim values are in that marketplace. The third level and the pinnacle, which is actually what I strive for myself and I push people toward, is how do you create goods and services and narratives that are by Muslims but they serve humanity, so that they're universally acceptable. Chris hinted at this, and I think this is got to be at the core of this economy, and I think millennials truly get this, is that what is our contribution to the world? We're here to make the world a better place. We're here to show that Muslims are our source of solutions, not just a source of problems. And that people who are not Muslims should benefit from our existence. And that we have in our heritage and values things that can be of value to humanity. And we can do that through businesses. We can do that through for-profit businesses that generate income and that employ people, but also make the world a better place. And if we strive for that third level, we're going to be respected around the world. We'll first, not only that, but it's just pure numbers. We open up a much bigger market. So it's really a win-win all the way around. But that's going to require a couple things as well. So emerging companies in this space need to do a couple things. So first, we can, there are companies in this space that want to constrain their audience. And I call this the nanny model, where we take something that's existing, we cripple it, and we give it to Muslims. Because we somehow think that Muslims can't, think for themselves, or that they need to be told what to do, they need to be protected from bad content, right? And that's kind of the lowest form. Sometimes we infantilize our audience. But if you flip that around, and if you think of creating things in this economy that empower and elevate, that allow people to express themselves the way they want to express themselves, that allow people to create their own creative narratives and their own platforms, and then you become an empowering place. I think LaunchGood is a perfect example of that. LaunchGood doesn't tell people what to do, it simply gives them a platform that allows them to come up with their own ideas that may surprise everybody, right? The great thing about this generation, and millennials are a perfect example of this, is that this generation wants to be entrepreneurial. They want to be creative at that micro level. And the companies that really do well, the Instagrams, the Etsy's, and things like that, are the ones that allow people to blossom as people. Now, the Islamic analog to that is, how do we allow them to blossom as Muslims, right? How do we allow them to shine and take that inner identity and make this external identity that makes all of us proud? If we can do that on a massive scale, if we can do that through multiple different companies that address everything from fashion to culture to practice, we will have done humanity a great service. And so I think we've just started on that road. I mean, the fact that we have such a massive market, and only in the last few years with the advent of social media do we have a global market that thinks and acts similarly enough that we can market to the entire world, instead of to these miniature markets around the world that we used to 10 years ago. That is an incredible opportunity, and the demand is so much bigger than the supply. I did some research in various places in Muslim communities around the world on consumption patterns by millennial Muslims. And I found that 70% of millennial Muslims consume online content from mainstream Western sources, and only 30% find locally contextual kind of Islamic or products that speak to their identity, even though the vast majority of them want to. So the demand is clearly there. But they also want quality. They don't want to be spoon-fed. They don't want substandard quality. They want something that matches the quality of the stuff that they see in the West that they're rapidly consuming. But they also want and they're not going to settle for anything less. So we're in a really, really great place.
Wonderful. So I think it's blatant that our speakers joining us today are all exceptional from different angles of youth innovation, right? So I really invite everyone to take advantage of this opportunity to ask any questions you have. I would like to ask the MCs to be prepared with microphones in case anyone raises their hand with questions. And I would like to remind the audience that our panel actually started behind schedule, so we only have a little over 20 minutes to ask the questions that you do have. So please take advantage of the opportunity, and we're opening the floor to questions from the audience starting now. Yes, there's a microphone in the back, please.
Hi, my name is Bashir Khairin. I was one of the 5 finalists actually in the Innovation for Impact yesterday. First time I'm here in the UAE and the being exposed to Islamic economy, something in the idea. One thing that I will take from everything that you all said, which was beautiful, and maybe agree a little bit with Shahid at the end, with the Model 3, which is, in the last year I realized who I am, and that was fueled by the faith, the person that I became, that I could actually stand there and pitch for 4.5 minutes and then answer some questions, and the idea that we've come up with, which inshallah will solve the not only the Islamic economy but also global, is that when I found myself and I, went back to the basics and I started reciting the Quran, I found who I was. And I think that's my Islamic value, that I can actually, make me who I am. And then I take those values to the world in a way that not only serves the Islamic economy, but the world. And I think, my idea is something that will help every single entrepreneur who wants to, hopefully go and build an e-commerce business. And in the back of that, what we do is going to try and hopefully grow those businesses to not just become, why do I have to confine myself to, it's beautiful to just be able to serve, the Muslims around the world. But at the same time, to me, that's very confining me as an individual. And I think I want to go out there and be a global leader, not just proud to be an Islamic leader, but global leader. That was just a comment that I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hello.
And also, since we are short on time, I would like to ask if everyone can keep their questions brief, and keep them to questions to the speakers. Thank you. Yes.
Hi. My question is to Dr. Philippe. You mentioned that not many entrepreneurs are eager to actually venture into the digital Islamic economy. Would that be due to what Mr. Ayman mentioned in terms of Sharia guidelines? Or else, what would be the reasons in your opinion? And if so, if that is also, if this is one of the reasons, not having a clear Sharia guidelines, when do we start and where do we start? Thank you.
I have two answers for this question. One is in order for us to have a proper digital economy in our region, we need an infrastructure. And this infrastructure is not yet matured. So any startup that we have today will end up having more challenges and more struggles until this infrastructure is complete. That's one. Infrastructure, let's say, for example, online mobile payment. We don't have that. Broadband penetration, we don't have yet to the level that it's there in the other regions of the world. And many other things. Number two, again, it is back to the perception of Islam today. Let's say I'm a Muslim or not a Muslim. What would attract me into doing something that serves this community? I would be very hesitant. And I would need a guidance on where to start and what would I do in order for me to be acceptable in that community. Because I would be very much afraid that I do certain mistakes that would backfire or give very negative effects on me. I would rather do something that's more generic, or as Shahad just mentioned, that is based on values, purely values and ethics that covers all of the humanity, rather than doing something specifically for the Muslim community.
And I just want to add something to that, is you're asking, if I understand correctly, like, why aren't more people going into the digital Islamic economy? Is that right? There's no role models.
Yeah.
I mean, very simply, like, hey, Steve Jobs was cool. Elon Musk is cool. Like, who's the example of the cool Muslim guy or girl who's made it in the digital Islamic economy? There is none. And until we have more examples, it's going to be an uphill battle. We have to make it cool, and there needs to be success. And unfortunately, it's just not a mature enough market yet to be there. It's like 1970s in Silicon Valley. Like, you're working out of your garage, and you don't get a lot of,
no glory.
You're cool.
I'm trying to not say anything unhalal, but there are people.
Yeah, no, I'm
US
sorry. We're not taking back and forth questions. I'm sorry, no back and forth.
It's okay.
Because of the time limit.
Actually, I would argue in the U.S. it's actually kind of cool. What's starting to get cool, because there have been people that blaze that trail. So actually, like, not to embarrass him, but one of my teachers, Muhammad al-Sharif, is here, founder of Al-Maghrib Institute, one of the early digital Islamic entrepreneurs, you could say. he's made it cool to be a young person who wants to go study Islam and be a teacher. Like, and prior to that, it was like, you'd be a weirdo to want to study Islam and be a teacher. Like, who does that, And I'm sure it wasn't easy for him, and he should probably be up here instead of me talking about it, but at this point, there's going to be a lot of people who are willing to make the sacrifice of comfort and lifestyle and reputation, but in 20 years, inshallah, they'll have the reward, we say. In the Quran it says they're not equal, those who went out and fought before the victory and those who came after, but they're all good.
Wonderful.
So my sense of what's worth to this question, if I may.
Yeah, of course.
The coolness is definitely one factor. It is uncool currently for our entrepreneurs to do something in the Islamic economy.
Yeah.
And there is always this notion of, are you the right person to do this? Which branch of Islam you're coming from? What's your nationality? How can you deliver something to all the Muslims? And we even had a couple Christians who came up with the idea for the Islamic market. And then all investors, all advisors are saying, how can you develop something for the Islamic market? You're Christian. It's not going to work. In that sense, and Elon Musk has created a lot of products that we use, irrespectively of what background. So an Apple is not for Christians. An Apple is for everybody, no matter what the religion is. However, if we find companies like financing comparison websites, and you ask them maybe put a drop-down menu there to say, I only want to see Sharia-compliant finance products, they're reluctant to do that. Because I don't know if we want to do this, how will the others see this?
Yeah.
And we got to, as a society, jump over that and say we create products. Some of these products are used by men, some are used by women, some are used by Christians, some are used by Muslim, and some are used by all of them. However, that notion of create something general, and then if you don't want to see certain content, if you don't want to use certain financial products, if you don't want to be exposed to certain foods, give them an option to opt out of that. Once we get to that point where you say, I service everybody, all religions, I take care of that, then we've cracked it, and then we'll have serviced the Islamic economy automatically.
Wonderful. Thank you. Please.
Yes. Bismillah. I'm, among other things, a mentor with some of the entrepreneurs in the DSO. My question to all the panelists has to do with failure. In this part of the world, but it's certainly not exclusively here, there's a fear of failure. The statistics also kind of maybe amplify that concern. Whatever you come up with, 50, 65% of the companies are not there at the end of the 5th year. We would welcome your comments to all the budding entrepreneurs here as to how and what can we do to help overcome this fear of failure and turn the failure and that experiences into a learning curve and take it forward into success in the digital space. Thank you.
I would love to start with that. So for my first startup, I maxed out my credit cards. I charged, $50,000 for my first startup. For my second startup, I tanked it. This was in 2001, and it was a mobile social networking play like 5 years too early. And I tanked $2 million worth of venture capital investment in my company. For my third startup, I mortgaged my house. I've failed 3 companies, and each one of those companies made me a better entrepreneur the next time. I took my first failure, the lessons I learned from my first failure, and turned it into Zabia.com. I took the lessons from my second failure to start, Alt Muslim. You have to embrace it. Failure is like, failing a test and then studying hard and then passing it the next time. No good entrepreneur is afraid of risk or is afraid of failure. And everywhere I go, the people who are most afraid of risk are the ones that aren't able to make the decisions you need to make to succeed. And so I want people to embrace that. And part of what we need to do is we need to model that. We need to model success after failure. I will stand in front of people and tell you, I've tanked 3 companies, but it didn't stop me. They say fail quickly, fail fast and then move on.
I actually see a huge opportunity for this reason with women. And it's because, for better or worse, most Muslim societies are misogynistic to a degree, and to the worst. But the point of that is the expectations I find for women in the Muslim community are very low. And whereas, like, as a man, I'm expected to provide for my family, I'm expected to have stability, have a good job, a steady paycheck. And for women, you know, like, my wife is Lebanese, her parents are like, why are you even going to college? Like, it's, you know, you're just gonna have kids, you can stay home. So she could do whatever she wants. And one of my co-founders is, in fact, a woman, her name is Amani Kalawi, and her parents are, you know, her brothers are lawyers and pharmacists and this and that, but for her, it's like, what, you wanna be an entrepreneur? Go ahead. And now that gives her the freedom to be creative, to fail, to get up and start again. And so actually, I think as a Muslim community, we have a huge asset in, we can take kind of this negative and turn it into positive, and a huge asset in the women in our community. And you're actually seeing, I see in Palestine, for example, many female entrepreneurs in Palestine, and I think in large part because of this reason. So I hope that's something we embrace and as an opportunity.
And that's all true, but I see your point as well. If I go to some of my co-investors and say, please come with us, invest in this exciting new Islamic startup, and they're going to ask, so can I lose money? And they say, yes, you can lose money. And they're all going to say, ooh, I'd rather build a hotel. You know, I probably lose money there as well, but at least I have some building substance that I can, you know, revert back to. So while I think we're coming a long way, it's still a bit of an issue, especially in the region. If you try to excite bigger investors in the region and say, maybe you want to be part of building this next big, exciting company, and then you tell them this is the model, you invest early and they work, and you know, maybe they become super big, you get 10 times your money back, or maybe they fail. You don't know, you can't really tell in the early stage. And then most of them, of the traditional investors who are used to real estate and more traditional investments, shy away and say, ooh, it might fail, how does it look? I might burn my fingers and say, I'd rather pass on this one. So we, as an investor community, as well as entrepreneurs,
that's a great point,
have to, especially in this region, it's different in the US, educate people of failing is part of the learning process and it's nothing shameful.
This is the missing piece in the digital Islamic economy, is we do not have seed capital. And every startup I've ever seen succeed started with an angel investment of maybe even $50,000 or $75,000. We don't have that layer that's enabling the 100 companies out of which the 10 can rise that the traditional investors might get interested in. Yeah. And if we don't enable that initial layer, we'll never see the 10 successes that the traditional investors will be interested in. And so that's one of the things we're trying to do, but we need like 100 more people in our space trying to do that.
I just want to add personally, since you know, I have experience within my age group, like as millennials and as entrepreneurs, that I'm not entirely sure, everything that you said, absolutely true, but I'm not entirely sure if a fear of failure is really prevalent amongst my age group. I don't know if that's necessarily it. Because on the contrary, I think that these days, anyone with an idea is really going for it. Anyone can call themselves a CEO these days, right? It's a very common title now. So it's like anyone that has like this idea, they think it's unique or something, they'll like go for it, and they lack the necessary planning or gathering of the resources necessary to make it a success. And without that preparation and without the affirmation that it's actually a viable, you know, like product or service, I'm not surprised that the statistic for failed companies is that high, because a lot of them are those ones that are just like, you know, go with the wind, I'm going to start this and see what happens, you know, and I think that's pretty common amongst young entrepreneurs these days. Do we have, did you have anything to add?
Two things, I think. First, we need to properly define failure. If we talk about failure, I mean depleting good part of your capital or having negatives, that's part of many businesses. Failure is when you stop and when your determination ends. If you have the commitment to continue, you will end up with success. This is number one. Number two, today we have many structures that can help you avoid all the mistakes and pitfalls of starting up. Otherwise, you will have to go with a ratio of 1 of 10, make 10 companies to reach the 11th might be successful. the incubation structures, the fund structures like the fund that we will be launching, will have mentorship, will have guidance, and will always try to minimize the pitfalls and the problems of failing that are usual and common.
Fantastic. So we have time for about 2 or 3 more questions, if we can keep them brief. Yes.
Faisal Masood, founder AMCC from New York, USA. Just wanted to comment that what as a community we are doing to recognize digital entrepreneurs. YouTube co-founder Javed Anwar was a Muslim. Safi Qureshi, founder of AST Computer, which was a multi-billion-dollar company, was a Muslim. Raza Foundry, founder of, he was a Muslim. But we as a community always failed to recognize entrepreneurs who were associated with technology. And I think it's high time now that as a community we have to start giving them recognition. Jazakallah.
Well, we haven't integrated these people into the digital Islamic economy. There's Muslims in the traditional economy, and there's a digital Islamic economy, and there's like a wall between the two.
Yeah.
And we have to break that down. So when we do, for example, our hackathons, we try to bring talented Muslims from Google and Facebook and other places and draw them in and get them interested in this space. Even if they don't jump over, they'll at least inform those people and inspire those people.
On the other hand, we have Fari Gandour, the super angel founder of Aramex in the region. Every entrepreneur looks up to him in some way. We got Sami Tokan from Maktub. We got Ronnie from Souk.com. So fortunately enough, something is happening, and we're building these role models. And young entrepreneurs look up to these people and say, I want to be like him, I want to be like her. We got role models right over here. And these fuel back into yes, you are a young Arab, yes, you live in the Middle East, and yes, you can still make it and become a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company and get respect everywhere around the globe. And if you tell more of these stories, and Thomson Reuters is one of the entities who's telling these stories, as are others, we'll get more people excited about being in this economy, excited about creating something, becoming a CEO, building something. And it's not just a thing people do in Silicon Valley, but it's going to be a thing people do here, do in the GCC, in the MENA region, in the adjacent Arab world, in Malaysia, Indonesia, and wherever.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much for your amazing speeches. You have all encouraged new entrepreneurs to start new digital or Islamic digital projects. Don't you think that the easiness of such projects on the cyberspace or digital platform, it needs some kind of control over them, especially that Islam is not something that we can give our thoughts from ourselves about it, because some thoughts might represent a wrong image about Islam. So doesn't that need some kind of control over those projects?
We have to get over the idea that there's a way to control things in the digital space. I mean, whether we like it or not, the information yearns to be free, as they say, and the only way you can combat negative images is with multiple positive images. This is why we drive, the work that you're doing at Muslim Girl. It's a response to narratives that you're seeing that that are harmful, right? Because you can't, and frankly you shouldn't try to control those, right? But you repel bad with good.
But to challenge you, and maybe Amani can speak to this. Let's say some ISIS bride wants to write a post on muslimgirl.net of why you should come over to Syria and marry a mujahid or whatever, right? I mean, that's not something you would, I think, permit, right?
No, but it's not something you can control either.
I mean,
you can control it if you own Muslim Girl.
I mean, as a platform for us, I think that it's kind of, for my generation at least, I think there's a pivot away from having one monolithic image of what Muslims should be or what the image of Muslims should be portrayed as. It's more so allowing a platform for the many diverse identities and images of Muslims to have a place in the media, in the digital space. if it's responsible for the deaths of innocent people, I can say on behalf of everyone, we can pretty much exclude that since it doesn't have anything to do with Islam. But you know what I mean? It's kind of like, like Chris was saying and like Chad was saying, you can't really control that image. And it is about taking back the narrative by putting your own voice and narrative out there.
But I will say this, every property I have, every digital property I have, every comment, every review, every submission is moderated because we do have our own rules within our site. It's just that we can't control what other people do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I maybe misunderstood your question.
I'll actually say what I find inspiring about the digital Islamic economy is it's kind of creating cooperation between Muslims, right? I mean, there's the Sunni and Shia tensions, but I'm sure MuslimGirl.net and LaunchGood, we don't define ourselves as Sunni or Shia, even though most of our company might be Sunni, for example, because we're trying to represent the community as a whole. And I see that as an opportunity where actually this type of business can hopefully bring a lot of peace and accord amongst Muslim societies, inshallah.
I have another angle in that, which is if we look at the most advanced sector between the halal pillar, the banking financial sector, this doesn't exist in the same magnitude that we have here. A lot of international organizations, Citibanks and others, are encouraged to produce Islamic products, and a lot even of entrepreneurs are willing to participate. The reason for that, there is a well-defined set of guidelines that will allow you to follow in a professional way and end up with something that is acceptable within our community. We badly need that today. And then we have also not to limit, but leave the room for freedom and for innovation, but within this container of guidelines.
All right, final question. Yes.
Hi, Saad Malik, co-founder of AMCC and also co-organizer of the Innovation for Impact competition. Contrary to what Dr. Phillips said, I think that there's certainly enough people who want to do something in this space. And we see this in our organization for the last 7-8 years. We get emails from entrepreneurs and new companies every week saying, hey, we're doing this thing, I have an idea for this thing, I'm working on this project, I need help. It seems though the demand is there, but we don't have enough investors who are willing to put their money where their mouth is. Essentially what Shahid was saying earlier, that we don't have enough people willing to give in the seed stage, where they say, okay, you know what, I'll take a leap of faith. We're not sure what's going to happen, but we'll take a leap of faith and we'll see where this goes, because we are still very young in the market. All the founders who I've spoken with, they're saying that, I've spoken with many investors, and they keep saying, they're either saying that the idea won't work because it's too focused narrowly on Muslims, or that they're giving them ridiculous valuations where they're essentially selling their soul. So where do we find that fine line, and where do we find such investors who are willing to say, okay, you know what, we'll put the money up, and even though this company might not work, we're willing to invest in this person who we think that will figure things out. The thing that keeps me up at night is I think about companies like LaunchGood. I think about Chris, who I think is doing something absolutely incredible. You go on his platform, you'll see a ton of creative Muslims starting things up, but then you'll also see that some of them don't complete their funding project on his site, and after that, they're nothing but an idea.
Yeah, so I think you have like the $1,000,000/billion question, right?
Yeah,
Resources,
and so I'm afraid, what keeps me up at night is I'm afraid that someone like Chris's company will shut down because he won't get the resources that he needs to keep going, even though he's doing something amazing.
Exactly.
So what are we doing to deal with that?
Great, resources, please. Great point to end on.
First of all, if I have an idea, I'm always afraid that I'm not being able to get acceptance from the investors. Well, we as investors, we came up to you and we said, well, this industry, the Islamic digital economy, is in the beginning. There are many gaps. We have defined those gaps in our reports. If you choose one of them, do your exercises, study well, and choose one of them, you will have much higher chances of filling a gap right away and being more acceptable. We don't have the leverage yet of just thinking of an idea and doing it and saying why investors are not coming yet, especially that most of our investors today are fairly traditional, and they are not yet very well accustomed to our type of investments. So you need to take it step by step.
I actually advise most startups that come to me to bootstrap as much as possible. A lot of early startups want to spend like half their time fundraising. I say, don't worry about that. Bootstrap, get a product out there, get it some traction, and get to the point where the investor starts chasing you, not the other way around. Ideally, I would love to be able to have seed capital up front. And inshallah, by early next year, we're going to have our seed fund and we're going to start dishing out that seed capital. But for now, you have to do it the kind of the old-fashioned way. And we all have to collectively prove this market. If everybody believed this market is as big as it really is, we wouldn't have a problem attracting this investment. But I think people are still very skeptical.
So I think it's more a general problem. It's not to do specifically with the Islamic economy digital startup, but it's any startup in this region, because everybody's suspicious of the startup, be it digital, non-digital, be it Islamic, non-Islamic. So as a region, we really have to come aligned with venture capital, with seed, with bridge financing, because there is just not enough here, irrespective of Islamic or not. And two of the investors are here. So Allah Capital, the management team is here, I'm here. There is MEVP, there's STC, there is WAMDA, there's LEAP, and there is much more than, let's say, 5 years ago. There could be double, but we need to lead it that way. And on the Islamic economy, a side comment potentially, and one more entity is here. It's the Private Equity Association, the MENA Private Equity Association. They can also go there and look up who are the investors in the region and approach them. If you have an Islamic startup, it's not enough to say, I have an Islamic startup, I have a big market. I think we just read it, $1.9 trillion. People will buy from me. The Muslim consumer is as critical as any other consumer. Yeah. They want service, they want a good product, they want safe transaction. It's not just because it services a Muslim cause, you can cut corners and say, well, we don't need this feature, we don't need that feature, it doesn't have to be online in the morning because everybody's sleeping. So the Muslim consumer is as picky, if not even more demanding than any other consumer. So if you have an application, if you have a digital solution for a specific group, it has to be as good as anything else. It has to have all the integration, it has to be secure, it has to be user-friendly, it has to be in English, it has to be in Arabic, it probably has to be in also other languages, and you guys know that much better than it. But some of the startups come and say, I want to do this, but it's not really ready, so I just launch it for the Muslim community because their standards are apparently lower, which I think is not correct.
At the end of the day, nobody owes LaunchGood anything. If after 3-4 years, if we can't keep our doors open, we failed. The community didn't fail us. And as businesses, we have to remember that we're not charities. It is hard. Sure, a lot of startups in Silicon Valley get a lot more funding and access to capital, and that's a problem we need to fix. But for entrepreneurs, and I know there's a number of them in the space here today, that's just a struggle you have to get through. And you have to focus on creating value. And if you create value, you maybe won't even need investors. You'll be able to make enough profits from your service that you're independent, and that's a great thing. We're talking about creating sustainable businesses, and I think that needs to be a focus of entrepreneurs as well. Is get sustainable. Don't worry about chasing investors, as you said, or thinking people owe you just because you're a Muslim trying to do good in the world.
Excellent. Well, I would like you all to join me in giving our speakers a round of applause. And thank you so much for joining us today for our panel.